We're halfway through our conversation about the state of education here with teachers, administrators, legislators. We're getting to the topic at the top of everyone's mind, school safety.
Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, southwest of Austin. 22 people are dead, 19 of them students, 2 teachers, and the shooter.
My heart was broken today. We're a small community, and we will need your prayers to get us through this.
What happened in Uvalde is a horrific tragedy that cannot be tolerated in the state of Texas. There is swift action being taken by local law enforcement as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety.
We owe it to the memory of those children and teachers to make sensible, meaningful change.
House Bill 3 is a key part of the legislature's response to Uvalde.
Texas school districts rushing to come up with the money and personnel to comply with new state law requiring an armed officer
on every single campus.
This district is not expecting to have an armed guard at every campus by the start of this school year.
We are being asked to comply with bad law.
Our kids and these teachers and these staff deserve to be in a safe place.
All right, we're going to start with the teacher in the room, Cristela. What's your reaction to this last year? How do you feel in your school as far as safety goes?
I'm going to try not to cry, but Eva was my cousin. Give me a minute. So it is really dear to my heart, and I get it, and you have to understand, I'm a human, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent, and I've been nothing but kind when I talk to people about anything. But being in this room silenced my voice. Just because the way we kind of talk to each other about things. And the biggest thing about safety is we can only be as safe as the people in it. So funding and safety are interconnected no matter what you look at. You know, SB 3, which is requiring, districts to comply by tomorrow, but yet, giving us only $15,000 per campus, that's not feasible. The officer's gonna need a car, the officer's gonna need their equipment. $15,000 doesn't cover it. So we know that good policy and good funding should go hand in hand. And it's not about me, it's not about you, it's not about anybody in this room. It's about the kids that are in that building. And now everybody's needs is different. We may not need, teachers that are become marshals that are holding guns or any of that, but every district has their own need. So you can't just put a Band-Aid and say, this is how we need you to spend your money, because that doesn't fix it for everybody. Everybody has a different need. But again, the safety isn't within the building, and every campus, every district knows what that need is. The state cannot say, this is what you need to do, because they don't know what is going on in our campus. Just like they didn't know what was going on in Uvalde. So you're thinking about school safety, we've left out the table for a while. Mental well-being, social emotional learning is off the table now. But social emotional learning supports mental well-being, not only of students, but of the teachers that have been traumatized because of what's happened, because of school safety issues. Robb Elementary traumatized the entire state of Texas. It changes what I do. If I hear, the police department down the road practicing and I hear the bullets, I react differently because it has changed my behavior, not because I planned it. Do I close my door every time the bell rings? Yes, even if a student's late. You gotta wait, and I have to open the door. Students cannot open the door. So it's changed the way we are, and it's affected our students in our school. So if you're not funding how we help students overcome it, and you say it's COVID's a long time ago, but it's not just COVID. Kids see this. Kids watch it on the news, and they're aware of it. And they're afraid to come to school. What do we need to do? We need to build that culture. Give us the funding so we can have mental well-being, programs in our campuses or in our districts for that. And that's a start. That's just a drop in the bucket. And again, like I said, every district is different. Every campus is different. And having the flexibility of knowing how to budget for that to be equitable for every campus, for every district across the state of Texas. And so that's a big Rubik's Cube because there's a lot of moving parts. There is not just one solution for that. You know, I tell my students, I can keep you safe as long as you're in my classroom. If you're not where you need to be, I cannot keep you safe. But my first job is keeping you safe. My kids go, Mom, you need to retire. It's like, why? Because we know what you're going to do.
Cheyenne, just want to talk to you. What are conversations like with your teachers? Do they feel safe? You're the leader on your campus.
So safety, it's our biggest priority. The safety of our kids, the safety of our staff. It's my thought the moment I enter the building until I leave that day. It's a priority in making sure, like she said, there's different needs across the building at what our students need and what our teachers need. But we do have things in place. We follow our drills down to a T, making sure that in a situation we can respond in a way where there's not panic. But it's whenever I hear kids come into the building and it's a topic of their conversation, it just breaks my heart because it shouldn't be what they're concerned about coming to school. But like she said, the SRO, we were able to hire one SRO within my school district. We need 4. We have 4 campuses. $15,000, and I believe like 17 cents per child went to support that, and we're not able to do that. The other piece of that, if we did have the funding that we don't have, but we don't have qualified applicants. We just had to submit a resolution, our board did, stating that we're not going to meet these requirements, and so one SRO will cover our 4 campuses and do the best we can.
I know some of the lawmakers here, parents as well, so certainly an important topic. If either of you or any of you would like to weigh in on just what you're doing with your position to help make laws and help the safety of these schools, would anyone like to weigh in?
I'll be brief. Sure. I mean, as I first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for what y'all do on a daily basis in the public schools here in Texas. And I would say that right after the education of a child, the most important mission for our public schools is keeping them safe. Mm-hmm. And I cannot even imagine what it would be like if my kids go to local public schools to get a call one day there's some kind of a horrible situation there. So my heart broke in Uvalde, and it breaks every time we hear one of these stories. So just thank you for what you're doing to prepare for that. Look, I think the legislature has some things to be proud of here in terms of the amount of priority that we put on school safety post Uvalde. And I want to real quick on the funding side first, which is that I mentioned this briefly earlier, but we increased per pupil education in the state of Texas almost $1,900 per student. And the school districts have a great amount of discretion how to use that money. Yes, specifically for safety, it was $1 billion one time, $1.1 billion, and $300 million recurring every year to help fund this. But again, they have broad latitude in how to spend this. And here's my question, given that there's probably broad agreement with everybody here on the panel, educate kids, job number 1, job number 2, keep them safe. What else are the school districts spending their money on that's not on education kids or on keeping them safe? And where is the discussion amongst the public school administrators about where they can cut that's not on education or on school safety? What about the massive bloat in administrator pay? We have superintendents across the state of Texas that are making more than the governor of Texas, they're making more than the Secretary of Defense, and they're making more than the President of the United States of America. And while we have salaries like that, we're being told, I'm sorry, we just can't find enough money to expand the Marshall Program, which costs the school districts almost $0 to make sure our kids are safe. So as much of a funding issue as something we got to talk about, how are the dollars being spent has got to be at least as much of a focus.
Let's start with Representative Hinojosa. Okay.
I have to say something because we get blamed for a lot of things in administration in the middle. We're always in the middle of all this stuff that we've got all this money and somehow we're just redirecting it to the wrong place. So I would have to disagree with you that our number 1 job is not education. It's actually the safety of our students. When they come to and from school, we want to get them to school safely and we want to get them home safely. I can tell you that we're spending about $4.4 million on school safety in our school district. So, and we're getting an extra $500,000 to do something with that. So in perspective, we've got about 20-something officers in our district. We have 33 campuses. We had an advertisement all year last year to add another school resource officer to our our police force to help cover some of more of our elementary schools a little bit better. It's just not enough money. And I'll tell you, if you want to come see me, I'll spend a little bit of time talking to you about where all that money's going. All the things that over my 20 years as a superintendent, my 30 plus years as an educator, all these extra things that we're doing now that we never used to do before. And a lot of them have come from the legislature as to what we're supposed to do. And then we also have just a lot of learning out there about how to intervene with schools for social emotional pieces. We've got social workers in the school district. We never used to have social workers in the school district when I started. We've got almost one per campus now. We've got more counselors than we used to have when I was in school. We have more administrators, that's right, but most of the administrators are actually there to take care of some kind of need. I've got a testing administrator now. I never used to have a testing administrator in the district, but the testing burden has gotten so much and we can't give those burdens to teachers. We want to keep those off their plate too. So there's just a lot of things that are in our budget that maybe we do need to take a look at. And we've made cuts to address a lot of those issues, but we're at a point now where we think we're giving up some other good things that we do in schools to make sure the safety. And we've got a Guardian program that's approved in our district. We worry about whether or not we'll have teachers in an elementary school that are willing to carry to make that that safety piece there. But I would prefer to have a police officer. There just doesn't seem to be enough money to do that without cutting other things.
Just a real quick question.
I'm going to move to Representative Hinojosa. I'm sorry.
We're
We're going to move to Representative Hinojosa. We'll get back to you. Representative Hinojosa, you were shaking your head earlier. Can you respond?
Yes, I can respond. With the school safety bill that we passed, most of that money goes to TEA to deliver to school districts and grants as it chooses. It also creates about almost 50 full-time employees at the TEA, a fleet of cars. Where is a discretion on a school campus for who the TEA hires or a school fleet? It is a lie to say schools have discretion with that money. There was a bill on the table that would have increased per student funding to about to $100, right? And that bill didn't pass. Instead, we passed this bill, which gives more money to TEA and discretion to TEA and not to our individual schools. We are hearing, all of us are hearing from our school districts that this is a problem. We have put all these mandates on our schools. We want to keep our kids safe, but we are not funding those priorities. And let me say, in public education, there is a lot of overlap and support that goes between the aisle, right? Bipartisan support for our public schools. But where we need to improve, and unfortunately our leadership has not supported this, is some kind of gun safety legislation. We need to pass some kind of gun safety legislation. When everybody has access to these guns, we will never be able to make our schools safe enough to keep our kids safe. No place will be safe enough in a society where everyone is armed, no questions are asked, and that is what we have created in the state of Texas, with zero responsibility for gun ownership.
This discussion will continue on, but let's hear from a parent very quickly.
Hello, my name is Teresa Rivera. My son attends an Austin High School. It's very important to know if the school district has the resources it needs to help him and his classmates to be safe and also healthy. Physical security is important, but so are mental health services, counselors, and adults who help children when they struggle. Has the state provided enough resources for these important safety concerns? Thank you very much for your time.
Mandy, you're the parent. Well, there's several parents in the room, but let's hear from you. What do you think about the question that she just asked?
If I heard her question correctly, she asked, is there enough resources being allocated for the mental health and the general health of students? Again, I think we're all parents here. So, and looking at that parent and understanding that when we send our kids to school that we want them to be safe and healthy. I also believe that while some parents are more inclined to rely on others and abdicate some responsibility, I think a lot of it, parents are now clamoring to be able to have more control. And when we talk about, when Representative Hinojosa points to money going to TEA or things like this, believe it or not, I think this is something that we can agree on, is that there's too much administrative bloat and waste, that the money should be following the child to the district that they're in, and it should be following them into their classrooms. So when we talk about the health and well-being of any child, children that are in classrooms with well-funded, well-paid teachers that have control over their classrooms, and we're talking about safety, health, all of this, we need to empower teachers to be able to remove problem kids. I know we were talking about a school shooting, but discipline is a massive issue. I'm talking about the fact that 10,500 violent assaults occurred in Texas public school classrooms. I had a teacher come up to me while I was on the road talking to teachers that said, I support what you're saying, but this is, a kid can destroy my classrooms and hit me, and he'll be back in the classroom 1 hour later. Part of the health and safety of students is recognizing the environment that they're in and or being able to remove children that need to be in a different environment. So to this mother that has the same concern that I have, the same concern that every parent on this panel would have, I want my child to be safe. I want them to be well educated. That should be at the parent control and at the teacher level control. And you should ensure that the parent and the student and the teacher have the resources that they need to give a adequate, better than adequate, education. So I agree with her. I think we need to put more money in the classroom. It should be 50%, like Representative Bryan proposed, not the less than 35% that's statewide. Empower our teachers. And if we are not empowering our teachers, which we are not right now, these women are not being paid enough money. And I will second that, and I will stand with them and fight for more pay. And I will stand with them and fight for them to have control of their classrooms. Then we have to ensure that parents like this woman and every other parent across the state of Texas can find the best education environment for their student and their child.
Representative Van Dever, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic of school safety and how to move forward.
You know, school safety is certainly in the headlines, unfortunately, much more than it used to be, and much more than we would prefer. And there's not an easy answer. It's a society that it's the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of our society spills over. You know, the school is a reflection of society, and so there's no real easy answer. I personally do not believe that the answer lies in some kind of gun legislation. Many of the guns that are used in these shootings are obtained by unlawful means. They're not legally obtaining these guns. So I do believe that we can do a better job of supporting our teachers, of identifying students who are exhibiting behaviors that are threatening and that are indicating that there could be problems. Most of the time, most of these school shootings, if you look at the person who is responsible, there are people who would say, I'm not surprised that person committed this crime. And so why we have to move to support the teachers that see those kinds of things, give them the resources they need to identify that, and then give them the tools they need to get that child help and get them away from the school and the opportunity to commit these horrendous crimes. Our schools, unfortunately, are overwhelmed, and our teachers are overwhelmed, our administrators are overwhelmed. And this is just something else they have to deal with. And I agree, safety is our number one. You ask any parent in the state of Texas, do you prefer quality education or you prefer we get your child home safely in the evenings? We know what their answer is going to be. That's not to say that education is certainly a priority for us, and we have to do better. But we have to address school safety in a way that gives our parents confidence when that child gets on the bus in the morning, they're going to be on that bus in the afternoon.
Very quickly on that, we can walk and chew gum in the state of Texas. It is not an either or, educate the kids or keep them safe. We must and we can do both. We can provide quality educations to every child in the state of Texas. We can give parents a choice, and we can keep them safe while we're doing it. And real quick, the one thing we can do that, by the way, I will fight every day that I'm in the Texas legislature to make sure we don't do the one thing that would cause more harm to student safety, and that's to deprive more law-abiding Texans of their God-given and constitutionally enshrined Second Amendment right to protect themselves and to protect their family. What I wouldn't have given if I was a parent in Uvalde to have somebody else in that school who loved children to have had a weapon. How many lives could have been saved that day? And then back to the question of funding, because we got a chart over here. I don't have time to bring it out. Real quick,
We
it's got to
did
go to
see
funding.
Priscilla raise her hand, and I'd like to
Okay.
hear what you have to say.
Well, there's a lot of different points that I agree with and kind of just want to put out there. The gun situation is not something that I voice a lot on, but I can tell you that the person that walked into Robb Elementary, those guns were not illegal. And we're starting to see more and more of the violence in schools is not necessarily the guns that are gotten illegally. You know, they were purchased legally. You know, that kid bought them, and I'm not going to get into the situation like I said before. And so that's why I was shaking my head, because that's not the same anymore. It has changed. That's not what we're dealing with anymore. Gun legislation, I'm going to let y'all deal with that. I am, you know, on a different level of that. But everybody has a right to protect themselves. I get that. Everybody has a right to safety. But when you're encroaching it on children, and everybody in Robb Elementary loved children. Everybody there loved children. But that doesn't mean they have to have a gun to prove it and stand up for that. So that's, I'm sorry if I took that wrong, but you know, when we're talking about safety, it's a totally different situation. And I actually, you know, wrote something because I don't want to get emotional, but funding and policy go hand in hand, no matter how you look at it. So if you're asking me if I have to choose, I can't really choose one because they're all interconnected. If you don't give a school funding, then that means I'm going to have to use my own personal money to fund my classroom. So then I'm going to need a pay raise. But if I don't get a pay raise, then I might not be able to live here because of the cost of, it's all interconnected, and we all have different perspectives. I get it. We all want the same thing, educate kids and keep them safe. But yet, instead of sitting at the table and having that kind of language, it's very different coming here. You know, it's not what I expected. And so I do agree that we need to fund. I don't think that taking funding from public education that's already sort of being defunded and giving it to private entities, that should be something separate. Somehow figure it out. You know, taxpayers should not have to pay for that. We already had funding going for teacher pay raises. We already had funding for SB3. We have funding for everything. But here's the deal. When I talked to relatives in Uvalde, they were promised all this, you know, help and funding for mental well-being. It hadn't gotten there. It was months before it got there. That's not necessarily a legislative thing. It might be, you know, an organization thing or whatever. But you can give us all funding. You say you're giving us funding. It doesn't get to us the way you think it was set to get to us. It didn't get to schools the way it was thought to get to. It's done very differently. Now, when you're in the classroom, like you say, you go to your school, I would love for our school to have what your school does. And why doesn't it? And it's not because of the way we spend money. We have cut corners in every shape or form to be able to give the pay raises that teachers deserve, to be able to fund the classrooms, to be able to get kids to and from school, and also figure out ways to give every kid on our campuses free breakfast and lunch, with the exclusion of high school, so that they want to come to school, so that they feel safe coming to school, you know, and that COVID is long behind them, and things like Robb Elementary is something that we can foresee and have programs so that we can catch them early and prevent those events happening for kids that are having those type of situations in their lives. So we have systems in place that need to be funded so that it continues, you know, so that we give those students that need that extra care without having to remove them or send them somewhere else. And that's what public schools don't do. We don't get that option. Within our district, we have to keep them and nurture them and give them the best that we can with their mental well-being or what discipline or whatever it is. We don't get to send them somewhere else to another district or another school outside of the district. It has to be with our boundaries.
We've heard a lot of great points from all of you here today. Really quickly, thank you all for being here, all the guests that have come out. Your top priority? I know there's a lot of topics we've discussed, but really quickly, we'll start here with Representative Hinojosa, your top priority in the state of education right now.
My top priority is to fully fund our schools, and in particular, let's fully fund one of our most vulnerable populations, our kids who receive a special education. We know this is the most underfunded portion of our public education system, to the tune of $2.3 billion a year that the TEA has said. We are underfunding our special education program. We are losing kids because we are not properly funding their education.
Cristela.
My priorities are also safety and funding, but they go in hand. You can't talk about one without the other. Would I like a pay raise? Definitely. But if you're not funding my school, then that's not going to happen either. And you know, when you treat teachers with respect, because that's a big one, and that hasn't really been mentioned here. Our profession sometimes is not looked at with respect when you look at other states. Because even with all the pay increases and everything that we've had, we're still at the bottom compared to other states. And so the respect that profession receives is important to me. How are you going to do that? By funding teachers' pay raises, by funding schools, that any policy, good policy, handed with good funding is beneficial for all.
Okay, Cheyenne.
My priority is on what I can control, and that is to provide a strong education for the students that I have, to keep them safe, and to try to get teachers back in this great profession. And my hope is that with that, our kids will continue to be successful. I have a lot of faith in public education, and I'll continue to advocate for that.
Representative Harrison.
I firmly believe it is a moral imperative to allow every child, every student in the state of Texas to get a quality education. So when we're dealing with our public school system, it's of paramount importance to me that we force these school administrators and the districts to finally make teachers their top priority. That's not happening today. That's got to change. And then we have got to empower every parent, every family in the state of Texas with education freedom so that every child can get the education that they deserve. Education freedom is a win for the school districts. Public schools improve. It's a win for the teachers. They make more money. It's a win for the parents because they're in charge, and it's a win for the students because everywhere it's been tried, school educational outcomes improve.
Dr. Killian.
Teachers and staff. I think that we've forgotten about them. I think your topic, when you brought up that fact that this wasn't the forum that you thought it was going to be, because it went political. I think that the problem right now is that we have politicians, we don't have statesmen. And we need answers from statesmen that will work together.
Mandy.
My number one priority is to empower every single parent with the opportunity to select the very best school for their child. That includes providing transparency into their classroom of what's being taught and why. It includes providing a high quality education. It includes respect for parents and teachers, and it includes that choice to be the ultimate decision maker where your child gets the best education.
Representative Van Dever.
You know, my priority is to appropriately fund our public schools and empower our local independent school districts to deliver education to their community. You know, what works in one district may not work in another, and certainly it does not need to be directed from Austin. TEA does not need to be in the driver's seat. It needs to be that local school district making those decisions, those locally elected boards making those decisions, what's best for their community, what's best for their children. We as lawmakers need to make sure we're funding them at an appropriate level.
And that's all our time. We want to thank our panelists for coming here and having this conversation, and thank the viewers who sent in those questions.
Feel free to explore KXAN.com for all our in-depth coverage on the topics we discussed today.